Thank you for joining the Alien Probe podcast. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated by gunshot while traveling in a motorcade in an open-top limousine in Dallas at Texas at 12:30 Central Standard Time on Friday, November 22nd, 1963. Texas Governor John Connally was wounded, but he survived. Within 2 hours, Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested. Welcome today to our producer, Robert. How's it going, Robert?
Hey, how's it going, Doug? I'm doing great. I love this topic, by the way.
You know, when you brought it to, we did conspiracy before. Deb and I did one, and it wasn't terribly well received. But I think it was because we did just a bunch of them and didn't really
Yeah,
focus on anything. And I said, another conspiracy. So I,
yeah.
did the research. I watched JFK, and to anybody out there, the JFK movie does a really good job of outlining, and I mean outlining, because I've done a lot of research this week on this, and wow, there is so much information about
It
different
is
conspiracies.
such a fucking good movie, dude. JFK is such a good movie. If you haven't seen, now, granted, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm pretty sure it holds the record for the longest movie ever. Maybe not, but it certainly is up there in the top three. It's extremely long and it's kind of a slow burn, but if you're into conspiracy theories, JFK is like the go-to. And when Oliver Stone released that, that's kind of how the conspiracy craze began. Conspiracy theories were definitely more in the closet, so to speak, before that movie kind of brought them out into the mainstream. And it, for better or for worse, kind of created the climate that they kind of thrive in now. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. So after he was arrested, he also killed a Dallas policeman, allegedly,
Allegedly.
J.D. Tippett, and he was arraigned immediately for that. But then he was also arraigned obviously for murdering President Kennedy. And then, and these are things we know happened, mafia associated, I should say, nightclub owner Jack Ruby ended up fatally shooting Oswald, and he was being transferred from the city jail to the county jail. It's kind of weird too how he just was able to walk in there and just shoot this guy. I guess in the '60s, it's a security minded, right?
Maybe, or maybe it was a setup
Yeah.
to eliminate the patsy before he could prove that he didn't do it. It's weird because like everyone just kind of separates those two people. Like Oswald killed Kennedy and then Jack Ruby killed Oswald. But Ruby and Oswald had a relationship. They not like a love relationship, but they had a friendship before this. And many strippers and employees of Jack Ruby's club claim to have seen Oswald in the club months or years before the assassination. But nobody, the majority of the people, I should say, don't make the connection there and don't say, that's kind of weird that they knew each other before any of this happened.
Did you read that a lot of those associates mysteriously died? Like
Yeah.
the strippers?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. One of the strippers, I don't remember her name, but she was like admitted to a hospital. But like, I want to say a day before the assassination, and she was like ranting and raving. She was on drugs, obviously, but she was like, they're going to kill Kennedy. They're going to kill Kennedy. And she said that she was given the drugs. Like she didn't take them voluntarily, but they were like slipped to her. So she would look like a lunatic. And I mean, that's just one of the many weird things that are surrounding this death.
Well, there was also a PFC overseas that actually told the story. It happening in the getting in the future, like within a week. I think it was a week of the actual incident, and he was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, and they kind of. I mean, that came up, and the Warren Commission kind of poo-pooed the whole, didn't connect, or it's almost like the Warren Commission. It's okay, we're going to jump right to it. Who do you think was responsible?
I personally think it was the mob, because if you look at JFK's dad's connections and how he kind of got the family to that place, that dynasty place, it was a lot of working with the mob during the Prohibition era. They have many, many connections to the mob. And it's been said that the mob helped get Kennedy elected through fraudulent elections or through, misinformation, whatever you think. But the idea was, okay, we're going to get your son elected to JFK's dad, but you got to play ball with us. You're going to be our man in the White House. And then once JFK got in the White House, he did the exact opposite of that. And so Bay of Pigs got fucked, which left him vulnerable because he didn't want to keep going into it. He didn't want to continue trying to invade Cuba. He was like, this was a mess. I should have never gotten involved with this in the first place. So then the military got on his bad side. And the mob, I mean, I'm sure you know, because you're older than me, the mob held like a lot more sway over power, in the early 1900s than it does now. And so I think that when he didn't play ball and when he fucked us over, the mob actually has connections in Cuba too. They had a lot of casinos and stuff before Castro invaded. And so I think it was just after all that happened, the mob said, okay, he's got to go. How about you? What do you think?
Johnson. I'm going with Johnson, and the reason is there's a couple reasons. He's an oil magnate, obviously. So is George Bush. I'm going to implicate, and I want to make a statement now. I'm reading. I'm not. This is not my story. This is something I read. So I don't want Danny Johnson's family to call me. Hey, because it did come up, and somebody did mention it on the History Channel, and they made him pull him off. They made him pull it off the air. So just reading it, but I kind of adopted the theory, and a couple of things, and that they're arrogant, rich, arrogant. Johnson, like I said, oil magnate. Kennedy wasn't going to put him on the ticket for the next election. I don't know if you knew that. He was going to pull him off and bring on someone else. I've got this in my mountain of notes here, but he was going to bring someone else on the ticket. Now, obviously, Johnson didn't, he's arrogant. He doesn't want to be, and when Kennedy gets killed, obviously he becomes, he steps in and becomes president. The other thing is Kennedy wanted to get out of Vietnam pretty badly. So he wanted to end the war there and, pull everyone out. Johnson was a huge, huge investor in Bell Aircraft, the Huey helicopter. So the demise of Vietnam would mean, and he got filthy rich off the Bell helicopter investments by us having so many in Vietnam. So he didn't want that to happen. So he didn't want to become less rich, because this isn't going to kill him. It's not going to. I shouldn't say kill him. This isn't gonna. This isn't gonna. Ruin him by any What is his wife, Lady Bird? So yes. They both. But I think it was. Who did it? I think there was probably. I think, as I read through this, I don't think Lee Harvey Oswald alone. I don't know about you. I don't think alone he could have. He wasn't, when he was in the military, and he didn't get his main training in our military. I think what happened was he was in the Marines, and one day he said he had to go on leave or something, then never came back. It was one of those things. He learned how to shoot a rifle, not with a scope, but he learned how to shoot a rifle in the Marines. But he also went to Russia after he did that. And I think he got his training somehow, because there's a lot of stories about this. He went to Russia. I think he was actually trained in Russia, but I don't know that the Russians are really. He may have got trained, but then I think he got trained and then was somehow pulled into this, into this web. And involved in the assassination, but I don't think he himself did it. I think it was shot. There's so many. There's so many. Do you think he was involved? Do you think he pulled off all three of those shots in 7 seconds?
No, it's impossible. It's not impossible, but a guy who was barely trained, like you said, it would be ridiculous, and he had no real reason. The Russia thing doesn't even. I know it either, because why? He definitely went to Russia. He was like a radical, like
Yeah.
a bunch of annoying people always are. And then I think the military saw an opportunity to pin it on him once he came back. He did defect to Russia. It is weird, the synchronicity of the U-2 spy plane being shot down by Russia pretty close after he defected. But that would insinuate that he had some kind of closer intelligence connections, right? Which isn't even
No,
really
no, they just
that
basically,
doesn't.
yeah, they basically just set up a surface air missile and got him. I mean, it wasn't like there was any, unless he knew it was a U-2. So, I mean, it's a
Mhm.
spy plane. It flies super high, 100, I'd like to say 70, 80,000 feet.
Yeah,
But I mean, you got to have a spacesuit to fly the thing. Just like
right.
the SR-71, you have to have a spacesuit to fly the thing, because just in case something
Yeah,
happens, it's not drop the oxygen mask. It's like you have no atmosphere inside.
right.
You're done. You're done. So you're going to need an environment to, but yeah, I mean, they shot that thing and it actually, Gary Powers actually survived and was, but that's another story.
Yeah.
But, there was so many. And then Oswald, okay, so he can't get, I agree with you. I don't think he did, but I think he's involved somehow. But do you think he's a patsy? He's not involved at all. They just like arrested him.
Yeah, I
They
do. And I don't even think he shot the cop. I think that this was all planned in advance. In particular, Oswald being arrested. That theater that he went to, that was, I believe, the safe area that he was supposed to report to if something went wrong.
right,
And this is part of the limited information that we have about Oswald because he was involved in some way, but I think he thought he was involved in something else. And meanwhile, these people behind the curtain were actually getting him involved in the assassination. There is some weird COINTELPRO stuff that goes on with Oswald throughout the entirety of his return to the US from Russia. He has involvement with Jack Ruby, so that's the mob. He's got involvement with the guy. God, I can't remember his name. I've been trying to think of it for the last 5 minutes, but there's a guy in
Bannister.
JFK. In JFK the movie, he's the old guy. It's not Bannister. It's the old guy that beats up the guy from The Odd Couple. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh
Jack Lemmon.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
not. It's not Jack
That's
Lemmon. It's
Bannister.
Jack Lemmon's
That's
boss.
Bannister. His real name's that's Bannister. That's
Oh, it is
the
Bannister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He hit, yeah, because he said, "What are you gonna do? Kill me like you did Kennedy?" And that's when he cracked
Yeah.
him over the head with the gun, and he actually went to the hospital.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of crazy. But back to the movie theater or the theater, real
Mhm.
quick. Something as I'm reading here, and I brought this up to Dr. Bill too. I go, I asked him, I go, what do you think happened? He goes, yeah, he could have done it. He was kind of going with the stock story, that yeah, he probably did it,
Uh-huh.
whatever, game over. And I go, I'm not buying it. And when he shot the cop, the story is he shot him with a 38, and that they found two spent cartridges at the site. Well, when you shoot, it's a revolver. It's not, semi-auto where it ejects the shells. When you
Right.
shoot, I think you're familiar enough with this that when you shoot a revolver, it the shells just stay in the cylinder.
Right. So
It
what
does.
you're
They don't
saying is
pop out.
it was obviously planted
They're
evidence.
planted.
Like
I mean, did no
yeah,
mention
we,
at
we would
all.
never we would never fall for this now, but it shows you how much the internet has changed things. Back then, the only information source people had were like newspapers and radio, which is much easier to manipulate if you're in the higher echelons of power, right?
Yeah.
So that and I could imagine people in the 50s dumb, just like, oh well, the shells were there, like story's over, man. They're fucking done.
They went. Well, they don't have
Right,
any of the kind of information that we're privy to now. I mean,
right.
this is. I mean, there was even, and I'm gonna be on and off track. There was even one theory that when there was shots from possibly the grassy knoll, of course, and then 6 stories up where Oswald was, and that when the shots rang out, they missed, and well, one of them hit. One of them, the grassy knoll, I think, was actually in front, and that's where another. We'll go over that in a little bit, but um, that the chase car behind the limo stopped when the Secret Service agent reacted to the shots. He had loaded his gun, and then something happened. The car lurched or something, and the M16 went off, and he killed Kennedy. He was actually the guy that killed Kennedy. But to your point, I think it's more than one guy. I think they had the magic bullet that that's a story where it went through, you know, three body parts, with all the way through Kennedy. First of all, went into Connolly, and then it went through six. They said 16 layers of clothing, and then ended up on the floor. And then it somehow ended up. They just like grabbed it, and the bullet was pristine. You could have reloaded it. It's like there's no way.
It doesn't make any sense.
No, there's no way it could have happened like that. So,
a quick side note. I wanted to add a quick side note. If you are interested in how realistic it is for Lee Harvey Oswald to get those shots off, there's actually a video game that's completely recreated the entire scene. The entire game is just trying to kill Kennedy exactly like they say Oswald did it, which is kind of gross. It's kind of macabre. It's done by like legit video game developers. It came out like 10 years ago. It's called JFK Reloaded. And if you guys, and I believe it's a free download now, if you guys need to really look and see for yourself how difficult this shot would be from where he was in the book depository building, you just got to download the game. You'll see it yourself. It is damn near impossible without being like an expert marksman. And he wasn't an expert marksman, but he did have a double, and which we'll get to in a bit, that was an expert marksman. But I don't know. The game itself is really cool to check out. It's kind of gross, but I don't know. It'll strengthen your opinion one way or the other. That's for sure.
That is crazy. They got an actual video game that you can do that. Yeah. I got to get that.
Pretty cool.
Man, that is awesome. So, so the Secret Service agent, I got him right here, is George Hickey. He was riding in the follow-up car. So the theory alleges that after the first two shots were fired, the motorcade sped up. While Hickey was attempting to respond to Oswald's shots, lost his balance and accidentally pulled the trigger of the AR-15 and shot Kennedy. The people that, the people that put that out, he made them, I think he sued them for that story because he's like, I'm not.
Yeah.
But, so, what do you think? So the grassy knoll, there's guys that, there's other, there's other stories.
I think the grassy knoll is, it's very interesting. There's obviously a lot of clues. The doppelgangers. Lee Harvey Oswald had reported doubles all over the country shortly before the assassination happened. The two that stick out to me are the car dealership and the shooting range. The car dealership, he got in a very big argument with the car salesman where he yelled out for everyone to hear, I might go back to Russia where they appreciate workers or something like that. And everyone thought it was really weird because back then it was very anti-Russia, the climate. So, but the thing is, it didn't quite match Lee Harvey Oswald's description, even though the guy reported to be Lee Harvey Oswald. And then another thing happened on the shooting range. There was a bunch of people just at a shooting range. This was like something a lot of people did back in the day. They don't do it as much now, but there was a guy identified as Lee Harvey Oswald at the shooting range who not only hit bullseyes on his marker, on his target, but he also hit bullseyes on everybody else's. So he just started shooting everybody else's target until they kicked him out. And they're like, what's your name? Lee Harvey Oswald. So, I mean, you're obviously trying to set down a narrative here, right?
Yeah.
With these doppelgangers going around the country doing all this like weird shit like this. So I found that pretty fascinating. In addition to all the other things.
You were talking about the umbrella guy really briefly. That he had his umbrella there, and actually they couldn't find. He wandered off and they couldn't interview him. But then later on, I guess he popped up or someone
Uh-huh.
popped up. I mean, I don't know if it was really him, but he said that he was really anti-Kennedy, and that he went there to make a statement by opening and closing his umbrella, which I think is really weird. I don't know
What?
why. Yeah, he was
Let's
like
just flip
opening
them
and
off like a
closing.
normal person.
Yeah, he's like just opening and closing an umbrella. Um, he's another statement was that might have been a signal of some kind for
Right.
the shooters that the car, that the limo was in a certain position for them to actually fire on it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's, but the magic, back to the magic bullet theory. I mean, he stated that the bullet, the trajectory, it hit Kennedy above the right shoulder blade, then it passed through his neck, according to the
Mm-hmm.
autopsy. Would have had to change course to pass through Connolly's rib cage, fracture,
Mm-hmm.
and then get to his fracture his wrist, and then um, it like there had to have been more than one. I mean, there would have had to have been more than one bullet. And they like insurance, so I think more than one. Just to make sure the job's done. I think whoever set this up, um, I think they would have had more than one person, doing this. Maybe it was the grassy knoll. They said that someone saw they were behind that somewhere, and they thought they saw because that's when you shoot a gun, it's got smoke. It's not just the sound of the bullet; it's the smoke. You're gonna have a puff of smoke.
People
So
reported that behind the grassy knoll.
yeah, exactly.
They saw, yeah, they saw smoke coming up behind at the same time, and a lot of people during that time were pointing to the grassy knoll. After all the pandemonium started, everyone's like, "The shot came from there. The shot came from there." And this is interesting because then the police tell them all you heard was echoes. As anybody who's been around firearms knows, when you feel the direct sound from a firearm, it creates a pressure in your ear. You can almost, feel it tap on your ear if you
Yeah,
don't have earplugs on. That's why you have the earplugs. And so this is how people are able to like triangulate the source. And far more people were pointing to the grassy knoll than were pointing to the fucking the book depository building. And I think that this is a very interesting aspect of this is that the people, there's one woman in particular, I think it's Marjorie something or other, I might be wrong, who said when they were doing the Warren Report interviews for the investigation, she was like, no, there was the grassy knoll, it's the grassy knoll, and they yelled at her and said, no, this is the story. You're gonna say it like we say it. All you heard was echoes. There was nothing behind the grassy knoll. Um, it's frustrating.
well, there's
Uh,
even talk of, because of where the bullet, they want the bullet to seem like it came from behind,
right.
to prove that Oswald was the lone shooter. But they say that the grassy knoll was in front, kind of. I think it's a grassy knoll or another location was
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, even across the street at another building. And the shot that hit Kennedy was because they said, you watch the movie and it said he lurched forward then back,
Mm-hmm.
as though possibly, they said, well, that's the car, that was the car lurching
Mm-hmm.
based on what the driver was doing. But if he shot from the front, then another story that popped up was, okay, shot from the front. Now they're gonna know once they do the autopsy that, oh shit, he got shot from the front, so it's not just Oswald, and that's gonna pop
Mm-hmm.
up. And another story says that when they got the body, they put it on the Air Force Two,
Mm-hmm.
and when they got to um, where they were going to, take the coffin, it was actually in a coffin. They um, put another cadaver in there, and then his body went somewhere else because they didn't want people to know that he actually was not only shot in the back, but another shooter was there. And then they removed they had another entrance, like the plane has the belly has two, you can pull it out from either side. So they had all they said the coffin that came out that all the reporters and everybody was watching come off the aircraft, that coffin
Mm-hmm.
was empty. The real
Wow.
coffin was coming out the other side of the plane because they didn't, they didn't want anybody to know, another,
Oh.
I mean, it's just as I read through this, like I said, I'm like, oh god, another conspiracy theory. But as I read through this, I'm like,
It's fucking fascinating. This
I
is
know
the
this is
coolest
I
conspiracy theory.
know this is the first because this is like you said. I think it's the first. This is where it almost coined the phrase conspiracy
Yeah.
theory.
Yeah.
You know, but it's I don't know. It's fascinating that members of our government could possibly because they're saying mafia hitmen could be doing Cuban hitmen could have been doing it, our own secret service, another our own secret service, um, could have been doing it. I mean, they when they set up this event, I don't know how far in advance they were told. I mean, did they know a month ahead, a week ahead, a couple days ahead where they were going to be, what route they were going to take? I mean, the Secret Service, even in the 60s, was a lot more diligent than it would appear. There's no bubble top on, why is there no bubble top on this thing? So he's just riding in an open air
Yeah.
limousine. I mean,
Ridiculous,
you're just asking for it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many nuts out there, and they said that they didn't have a Secret Service contingency. Um, they, they didn't have enough Secret Service. You know how they'll uh, run alongside the limo because the thing's going like 6 miles an hour or something.
Yeah.
And they're running. They got their hand on the. They're like, you can't do anything from above, but you got your hand on the fender of the limo and all. There's like 4 of them or 6 of them, and none of that. There's so many questions about why we didn't even have the protection for him. It was almost too easy,
Yeah. Definitely seemed like there was some inner echelons or upper echelons that were part of this plan. The convertible is just like, oh my God, come on. Like, what are you guys doing? Driving all around. I'm going to go at some point to that site and look at it for myself because I'm moving to Texas in a couple of months. But it just seems so impossible that not one person like raised their hand like, hey, this is a little fucked up, this plan sucks, like let's not do this, let's skip this parade or whatever.
Yeah, and again, how far in advance did we know? I mean, the only people that would know, because they'll change the route, they'll do all kinds of weird things when we're talking about a president. Look at the Pope now; he's got the Pope mobile. Because people will shoot the Pope or whatever. But it's interesting because the Warren Commission. I mean, in '64 they found no evidence linking Ruby's killing of Oswald to any broader conspiracy. It's almost like the commission.
I mean, yeah. Well, the Warren Commission for one is boring, and I think that's the point.
Yeah.
I've tried to read the Warren Commission a couple of times, and it is a snoozer.
Yeah.
So I don't suggest it. It's definitely not going to be on my book club list anytime soon. But more than that, Ruby was killed too, and he died of cancer. But before he died, he was like, you guys have to get me out of here. Like, there's so much more to the story that you guys don't know, because he was imprisoned for the killing of Oswald. And then he got cancer, and he claimed that he was injected with cancerous cells, which triggered the cancer in his body, which, I mean, I don't know. It could be. Just makes me scared of somebody injecting me with cancer cells. Like, I don't want any part of that,
Yeah, there was a plot to kill this. In a read called "The Plot to Kill the President," the New Orleans mafia boss Carlos Marcello was likely part of the mafia conspiracy behind the assassination. The mafia obviously had the means and the opportunity to do it. And, like you said, the mob set him up, put him into power, and then he decided that he didn't want to play ball with their interests. And then so they became disinterested in him. But I just can't see the mob, even the mob.
Not just him, though. You look at his brother. Look at both of his brothers.
Well, that was the whole thing. Yeah, that was the whole thing.
I am also really fat, and we don't have time for all of this, obviously, but we can go little short roads. The Robert Kennedy assassination obviously also feels like a mob hit, feels like continuing this. And then the Ted Kennedy one, he didn't get assassinated, but his character was assassinated with the Mary Jo drowning.
Yeah,
It
Yeah.
almost seems like this was like the Kennedy assassination was just part one. And they were like, you guys fuck this. It stinks of a mob hit. Like, you guys fucked us over. Now we're going to totally fuck you guys over. And then they fucking killed the family,
Yeah.
either assassinated their character or just straight up assassinated them.
Well, he killed Robert, and then I didn't
Mhm.
even look. I didn't look into the circumstances of that, but obviously that was a pretty
It's
easy
the
one
same
for
thing.
him.
I mean, yeah, it's the same thing basically. They give him a fucking tremendous opportunity. He does the announcement in California near K-Town in LA that he's running for president. And shortly after, he gets, tossed into this, maze of pathways to get out of this hotel, and he's assassinated, I think, in the kitchen area or something, where he's just surrounded by normal people and
Oh my
like no
god.
protection. And Sirhan has said that he doesn't remember any of this, and he thinks he was under some sort of hypnotic trance, which then goes into like MK Ultra and
Yeah.
all the MK Ultra shit we were doing back in the day. Like, there's just so much to unpack.
Yeah. Government. There is government documents that reveal that the mafia worked with the CIA on the assassination on assassination attempts against Cuban leader Fidel Castro. I mean, we talked about that was the other thing. Did we? You know, the they the fact that we wanted to go after Castro and like you said the Bay of Pigs, that was I don't know. There's
Yeah.
so many different things. Just kind of going down this. There's so many different stories.
It definitely feels like when Kennedy died, there was a dramatic shift in the role of government, and it became far more sinister than it was before that. And I mean, I'm proud to be an American, but at the same time, like, if you really look at the role of government in our lives in any country, um, this kind of shit should really scare you. It's terrifying to think that this is what we would do to one of our own leaders if they don't play ball. And I mean, there is a lot of records of mafia influence in the government again in those early 1900s, because you had no choice. And Robert Kennedy, when he was, I think he was the Attorney General under JFK,
yeah,
did a lot to kind of break up the mafia, which almost seems like he knew that the mafia was on Kennedy's, or that he knew that mafia was on Kennedy's bad side and the mafia was gunning for them. So I think him as a little brother thought the only reasonable way to protect him would be to start breaking up the mafia. And he led all these, inquisitions, I guess you could say, into the mafia life in like the early 1950s and started putting these guys behind bars, which probably made things worse, you know?
yeah. He can't. That's. I mean, he should have been. They're arrogant though. The Kennedys think that they can do whatever they want, and with I'm sure they knew there was a risk, especially
Yeah.
when you're dealing with the mob.
Hmm.
There was there's stories that Jimmy Hoffa was involved even back in the day.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
but Jack Ruby, he did have he was connected with you know with the mafia, and you know and then there's Bannister, and then Oswald had he had like a printing shop of these, because he was an extremist. He had a printing
Hmm.
shop in the same building, and like they were on a corner, and one door led into his office, and the other door was
Right.
Bannister's office, and so they were obviously, um,
Yeah, but I mean
you know,
that points to COINTELPRO, right? Because
yeah,
if they're all in there, and this is something that we encounter now too, it's all about agitation. If you look at like 1984 by George Orwell, you've got the Emmanuel Goldstein, right? So
yeah,
you've got this character that everybody needs to hate, and so you have to kind of launch this operation and basically role play these different roles to get people to kind of hate who you want them to hate. Like Russia, like the Cubans. It's This is why I think the Russia connection holds no water, because it definitely seemed like after Kennedy was assassinated, the push was to blame it on the Russians, and the push was to say, "Oh, he was a Russian defector. He came back. He killed the president. End of story." But there's so many other small things like the COINTELPRO fucking building. And that COINTELPRO building was like on the corner, of like this area with a lot of different intelligence buildings. So it doesn't seem that far-fetched to say that this is a small part of a much bigger plan to kind of
Well, it's
put us in a different direction that the Kennedys were trying to get us out of.
is it that much different today? I mean, with the election, with the Trump election, oh, the Russians are involved. They were. I mean, how do
No,
you know
it's not.
that?
That's why. But it's like this is why we need to. Like, I sound like an ignorant asshole if I'm like stop listening to the news. But seriously, stop
Yeah,
listening to the news because
yeah,
if you want to listen to the news, like put some work in. Like do the
yeah,
research. Don't just fucking repeat shit that you hear on the news. Because
yeah,
these guys lie to us. They lie to us all the
yeah.
time. They lie to us all the fucking time, and
It's
we just take it.
it's fake news. It's fake. Remember?
I mean, that's the thing is like, but then you can't say it's fake news because then you're like a Trump supporter and shit.
Yeah,
I've been
no.
saying it's fake news for like a decade. Now all of a
Before
sudden I'm
Trump.
fucking thrown out with these MAGA guys. Like
Before
fucking come on.
Yeah. So the Corsican member was interviewed in prison, mafia member. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
See, Christian David, he was a member of the Corsican mafia, and he was interviewed in prison. He said he was offered an assassination contract on President Kennedy, but he didn't accept it. Which is probably a pretty good decision. Yeah. However, he said that he knew the men who did accept the contract. According to David, there were 3 shooters. He provided the name of one. I'm not going to say the name, but there's one. And then he said that the other 2 shooters were still alive and he'd break a code of conduct if he identified them. He said he was asked what they were wearing. He says they use official uniforms. So now one of the guys that was on the street, well, with Umbrella Guy, but I don't know if he's my Umbrella Guy. He had had a badge like he was a police officer. I mean, I don't think whoever shot him's not standing on the sidewalk. Whoever shot him had to have been
right.
But they could have been part of this whole, could have been part of this whole, group of people that are doing this. I mean, it's interesting though that nobody's. Yeah, there was another story about there's so much information here, but someone on their deathbed said that they were a member of the Secret Service, I think, or a police officer, one or the other, that was actually one of the shooters. And nobody would pay any attention to it. Somebody was just, a cop sitting there, but he might have been. He could have blended in the chaos a lot easier after it was over and then gone away without anybody. A cop's not going to chase another cop. That's not going to be something that. But there was another one. There's authors, the government officials. Couple of guys. Who is this? Lamar Waldron and Tom Hartman attempted to synthesize these theories of evidence. The authors argued that the government officials felt obliged to help the assassins cover up the truth because the assassination conspiracy had direct ties to American government plots to assassinate Castro.
Right.
It's weird. I mean,
have you heard the Woody Harrelson theory too?
No, I've been reading so many.
Did he do it? No, like because the tramps, the transients that were arrested behind the grassy knoll near the rails.
Right.
One of them, because they took pictures of them, but then they were never identified. But a bunch of people came forward and said, "Oh, that's X." I don't remember his name, but it's Woody Harrelson's dad. Woody Harrelson's dad was like a criminal who like went to jail for robbing banks and shit. I think died in jail. But it's heavily rumored, and the pictures, it looks like him, that Woody Harrelson's dad was in that group of tramps that were the ones that never heard from him again. They arrested them, and then they just got let go. And that might point to the group that you're referencing. But these guys weren't dressed like police officers. They were dressed like homeless people.
Oh, my God. That is crazy. Woody Harrelson theory.
Yeah, look it up, dude. Woody Harrelson, JFK. You will see all sorts of hits on it. It's nuts.
That is
I think
crazy.
he said something about it too, but he doesn't say much, which kind of just makes it
he probably
more crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting because the 2003 Gallup poll indicated that nearly 20% of Americans suspected Lyndon B. Johnson of being involved in the assassination of Kennedy. But that's a really broad, it's like, hey, it's like promotion by assassination, which
Right.
is a term I use frequently at work. But the it's just interesting the different, but it's like this whole government cover-up thing is just, like you said, today we got the fake news. I only watch the local news, honestly, because I'm just wondering what's happening in my neighborhood. I don't really watch like Fox News or anything like that.
I read from both ends. I think this is the best way to do it. You read one article on Fox, for example, and you're like, that sounds kind of like bullshit. Let me read the article on CNN. And you will see they are dramatically different ways of presenting the same information. And from there, you can kind of make a kind of guesstimate on your own, I think, of where the middle ground is. And I think that's an important tactic if you want to kind of navigate today's news on the internet.
You have to do something. So let's talk a little bit about your podcast. What do you got? You're gonna have to pimp it, since you're on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I am.
What's going on?
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to thank everybody listening here to the Alien Pro podcast. I see we're still growing. And if you don't know yet, we have joined YouTube. You can find those links in the description. I'll make sure to post them in there. Give us a subscription on YouTube. My podcast is also all now on YouTube. I have Armageddon Dance Party, which is kind of a podcast about nothing. It's just a lot of talking, a lot of bullshitting like this. So go ahead, follow my podcast and the Alien Pro podcast on YouTube. Be sure and follow us on your leading podcast network. I think I have a guest for tonight. If not, I'm going to do one of my solo ones. Sometimes my guests flake out and I got to do it on my own, but we'll see. I got a good feeling about this one. I'm going to have to take a shower and look real nice because this one, I think you'll like this guest, man. I think you'll like her. She's a good one.
It's a good thing Debbie doesn't listen to these.
What you got to do is you wait till like midnight. You turn down the lights. You put on. You go to YouTube. You put on my episode. You can see my face, and we're gonna get video going for this podcast as soon as possible too, and we'll get that on YouTube.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
Thanks for everybody who already followed on YouTube. We're seeing those metrics. We're seeing them starting to climb a little, and I appreciate that. Mine. I'm putting on my YouTube, not only am I putting up my episodes, but I'm putting up some of my more popular clips from Twitch. And those are starting to climb too. So that's
I saw that from your trip to Japan. You got some I watched the one where you were eating and the guy's kind of just spying on you while you're eating. He's, the waiter.
So weird. I could feel him. It was so weird.
I think he was wondering what. Now that was when you had the camera and you walk around town. And I still have it. Still have parrot cam. I call it parrot cam because it's like a pirate.
Yeah, it's called a gun run backpack, and I've got like a high def camera that like sits right on my shoulder, and it's connected to this like crazy contraption that like takes different cell phone signals in to like keep a strong signal, and I can basically go wherever there's cell phone service. I can just record right off my shoulder. So I spent about a week in Japan in Christmas 2019. So I was in Asia. I might have brought the coronavirus back. I'm sorry if I did.
I think it was you. Patient zero.
But anyway, I got like a lot of content. And so I took some of the clips and then I took the long form films. I took 2 of them, 2 days so far. They're like really hard to download and upload. It's a big hassle. But I'm going to keep uploading those if you guys want to see my Japan trip. It was pretty fun. And I got some funny clips up there. And
then New York. You went to New York also, right?
Was it New York? I don't know if I have. Yeah, I went to New York in February.
That's where I recommended the strip club to you. Was it that long ago? Oh yeah, it was right before.
It was right before Corona lockdown.
Yeah, you brought it there. Okay, so you brought Corona into LA, which was a hot spot. Then you went to New York, and then that got to be big.
the first reported coronavirus case in SoCal was in Orange County, and that's where I was working at the time.
Just a coincidence, right?
Yeah, and then I went to New York, and like right after I left, they locked it down. I'm not. I'm just. It's very strange. It's very strange coincidence. That's all I can say.
But it put you down. I mean, you were in bed. How long didn't you get bedridden with this thing?
Yeah, and I don't get bedridden from sickness. I usually just walk it off, But this one put me in bed for like 2 days. It was maybe a few days after I got back from Japan in January of 2020. I was bedridden, and I never get bedridden from being sick. And the third day, I was like, man, I think I need to go to the doctor. And the fourth day, I went and got medicine, so I felt a little better. And right at that point, they started reporting it. So it was before it was like big news. I came back before it was like huge news. The huge news then was Trump assassinated that Iranian guy, and everything was fine. We thought maybe it was World War III, but then coronavirus took over the news right after that. Right as I was starting to feel better. Yeah, it was rough.
Did you get your shot? Your shots?
I got my first. I got my first. I got the Moderna shot. My arm kind of hurt, but I hear the second one's much worse.
I had the second. Yeah, I had the second one, and it was. I had literally 24 hours later. It's like I kind of feel like I'm getting sick, and I never get the flu. Knock on wood. I never get the flu. And I'm like, oh man, this shot. I gave it to myself. So it just, as I went through the day at work, it started getting worse and worse and worse. It got to the point where I could barely drive home. I was so just, like tired, and I just like I could fall asleep at any second. So I got home.
Go ahead.
I was supposed to barbecue. I was like, hey, you going to barbecue tonight? Yeah, sure. I got home. I could come not barbecue. I can go lay down. So I went and laid down, and about an hour and a half later, I got up and went, I'm starting to feel better already. And then that was it. That was fine for the evening. It was weird. But the second look,
That is one of the main symptoms of the coronavirus. I learned was fatigue. And that hit me too. When the first day I started feeling really bad, it's weird. I went to work. I was working doesn't matter, but it was in Orange County. It was a big company, and they had like this huge parking lot that I'd get there later than most because I was coming from LA all the way to Orange County. So I'd get there like 10 or 11. And so I had to park really far away from the building, but it's all right. I love walking, so it was no big deal. And I get out and I take 15 steps, and it was so weird because how you like feel when a cold's coming?
Yeah.
Like it's not quite there, but you're like, I'm getting a cold. Fuck. It felt like that, but like times 10. And it was like immediate. It was like I was walking, and then all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit. And I needed to like steady myself. And I went home early that day, which I never did. And I immediately went into bed and passed out for like a full day. Like a full day. That's when I was like worried. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? This is weird. Am I dying?
Yeah.
And then I chugged some Robitussin and then fucking got on with it on day 3. But then, of course, the news started spreading that it was hitting hard.
Now, you're not doing the live stream anymore, right? You're just doing a podcast. You're not doing that.
No. Yeah, I took off the live stream just because it's easier to book guests that way. Because then I have like a week lead in. I can, at any time, I could interview them, and then I could just upload it to YouTube and the podcast networks. That, and it didn't really make a lot of sense because my viewership started going up on Twitch, but nobody was talking in the chat. So I think at some point I'll probably go back to live streaming occasionally, but it'll probably be through YouTube. I think I'm done with Twitch.
Yeah, I thought it was fun because I'd be able to log in and watch the people's comments about things, but it's really just kind of the same. It's really just kind of the same, and it's a lot. You have a lot more flexibility when you do it when your guest wants to do it. I mean,
or when he oversleeps.
Yeah, sometimes they do that, but we have flexible. But luckily I had a lot of issues going on in my real job, so it worked out pretty good. But it's getting, and that's the second thing is getting guests. And I'll kind of mention some upcoming things. I've got Flat Earth Girl coming.
Nice.
I think what we're going to do is we have the technology now. I think she lives up in Nevada, so I'm not going to require her to come because of COVID. I'm not going to require her to come down here. we'll do it remotely. And she's going to talk about flat Earth, so we'll get you. Everybody wants to be in on that. I might have a house, like a room full of people listening. And I said, you guys are going to be able to hear it, but I want to ask questions. They have flat Earth people have an answer for everything. They know, and there's an actual. Do you know how flat Earth works? Have you ever looked into this? I know you love flat Earth, right? Now,
I
have
am
you
not a fan,
have you?
but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I don't want to. Anyway, so
No,
um,
it's fine.
she's is a guest, and she's going to be kind enough to share her views. But you know how it works. Have you seen Game of Thrones? You
A
haven't
little
seen Game
bit.
of Thrones.
Honestly, I haven't watched it too
You know
much.
about the ice wall. I mean, you've seen they've got this ice wall on Game of Thrones, and
Yeah, I've seen that.
and so what they say is the flat earthers say, and I apologize if you're not. That's not the terminology I'm supposed to be using, but at the end of the circle, it's a flat, and it has that ice wall around the entire perimeter of the Earth, and it's just the sea just goes up against this all the way around against this ice wall. That's all I really know about it. There was a 90-minute um, Netflix show on it. There's a whole following, as you can probably already know. There's people. There's like a huge group of people that subscribe to this theory that the Earth is flat, and then underneath it's kind of just rocks, and then above it's just the ocean. And
Well, why are we being lied to then? That's my
I don't
whole
know.
thing. Like, why this elaborate lie? Why don't we just admit that we're on a flat Earth? Like, why would we be all these scientists and stuff saying no, it's round? Like, I don't know, man.
Did you?
Are any scientists saying that the Earth is flat? I mean, we
No.
have to listen to scientists from time to time.
Have you ever flown? Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, well, the moon shot of us landing on the moon. Remember, there's the conspiracy that was faked. That we didn't do that either. I mean, there's not enough to even do an hour. It's like but it's interesting that it, that there's people that say that it was all filmed and we didn't really do it. And
Right.
there's but now we're on the moon. To the science thing, we're on the moon, and then the moon. You always see the same side of the moon, no matter what. Did you know that? It's always the other side of the moon is always just the other side of the moon.
I did not know that.
Yeah, there was one of the guys that worked. Hopefully he's correct. I don't know. He was telling me that you always see the same side of the moon. You don't like get to see. We spin, but we spin, but the side of the moon we always see is always just the same side. So what's going on the other side? Is that where the Chinese are landing, and they're doing all this?
I mean, I feel like China would love to brag about going to space way more if they were doing moon missions and shit. I don't think they would do it in secret. Right?
Well, they're there. No, they're there. It's real. They went up. They just had a shot, and they landed.
Wait, they have
there.
spaceships? I don't know anything about China's
Yeah,
space
they
program.
launched a ship. I believe it wasn't manned. No, it wasn't manned. They're not like. I don't think it was manned.
So they're still in like the 50s then, like we were doing.
Well, yeah. Well, you better watch out.
But the conspiracy is that we didn't fucking do it, right?
Right. But did you?
Yeah.
Have you heard that they launched their stuff up? They're way behind us in technology in that manner, because they're just stealing their technology from us, I think. But they're just behind in what they can get. But these rockets keep falling back to Earth. They've got one coming tonight that's going to be. It's bigger than a tractor trailer by the time it gets through the burn, of the Earth, and this is the second one that this has happened to. The other one landed in Australia and exploded, and now the one tonight. I think it's tonight. It's on YouTube. I watched it popped up, so I listened to it. The YouTube to Fox newscast, so it's probably fake. So, but they said it's. They said this thing's going to fall, and they said, well, the Earth's 70% water, so the chances are, and I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, 7 in 10 chance. What about the other 3? What's it going to let?
Right.
It's all like New York's in the trajectory. They can like figure out where this thing's going to land, and New York's like right there, and they said, so Nova Scotia or something. They're like trying to figure out where this thing's going to crash, and it said it'll be. It's like it's 26 coming in at like 12,000 miles an hour. That's like,
Fuck.
well, just think if it lands in a populated area. I'm surprised. I'm surprised it's not getting more news than it is. It's
Yeah.
going to be one of those things where, maybe it's an internet thing. Somebody made it up. I don't know, but look, keep an eye out for it popping up in a news feed near you.
I will.
You know. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Hey, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Alien Probe Podcast. We welcome comments, questions, or requests to alienprobepodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook visit our email at alienprobepodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook at alienprobe.net. Until next time, thanks again, Robert.